All right, I didn't expect to go live so quickly after last night, but this morning was filled with UFO news. So I'm going to go over some tweets and a few videos. And I think there's definitely enough to talk about to warrant going live. As of now, I have 0 viewers, and I did not promote this, but that's usually how it's going to be. If I think I have enough information, I'll go live, and if people want to watch it later, they can. And in the meantime, if we have 2 viewers now, I will do this at the beginning and end. And if you guys like this, you want to show your support, it would really help. And I will just go through that. So that's Patreon. I like Patreon. There's supposedly something else which I do not know about, Substack, but I'm not really familiar with it. Venmo and PayPal, and I'm going to get to my first, I think this is my first tweet from this morning, and I can actually, let's see, is that better? That's better. I actually have my lockdown hair under control. And Alexander is here. You are my only chat audience. I know there are other people here. So I'm gonna go over some of the stuff because there's a lot to talk about. So I had a message early from Marik, and I don't know how to pronounce Marik's name. It is Marik. It's on the. Let me pull up his article. So I'll just read from his article. I quoted his article in my tweets, but let me just pull up the actual article from the Hill. He's been writing articles, op-ed pieces in the Hill for the last, I don't know if it's over a year, but there's been some really great articles over the past couple of months. Let me find his actual article. I'm going to read from it and I'll comment on it as we go along. And it was ex-officials. Here we go. All right, let me pull it up full screen. So this was this afternoon, first thing I saw when I woke up, and I'll put it up full screen. All right, so start out, let me get rid of Fauci, make it a little bigger. He starts out, hey, David, hey. Yeah, David has been, I've known David for a few years now. He's in the UK and really, really on top of things. There's a lot of things I find out through him. He's in the chat right now. And I want to read one of his private messages because he summarized something and I didn't get to copy and paste it. So I got to figure out I don't want to put all of his private messages on there because he has very risque photos of himself up there. And I do not want people to see that. So anyway, kidding. Hello, Edward, Pix, Drew, and David. All right, here we go. So this is Marik. According to 2 former Department of Defense officials, the Pentagon office recently tasked with assessing, you know what? What a bad way to start. I have to get a drink. Otherwise, I'm going to run out of, not energy, but hey, stop. Sorry, I'm talking to the dog. I'm not talking to myself. Sorry, 1 second. Come here. Come here. This is the sweetest dog. Yeah, sorry. This is the guy who causes me problems. See how happy he is? This is Cookie. He's been on before. He destroys his paw, so he had to be taped up. And he pretends like he's going to bite you, and he does that stuff. See? Isn't that great? So, I'll get back to reading full screen as Cookie goes down. All right, go lay down. Be good. Lay down. Come here. Sorry, guys. He is a troublemaker. Yeah. He acts like Cujo. That's the problem with going live. I am by myself here, and I have to make sure he's not by himself because he just tears himself up. Get off of there. Get out of there. Go. Go. Go lay down. 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 Yeah, lay down. Good boy. All right, I'm sorry. According to two Department of Defense officials, the Pentagon office recently tasked with assessing U.S. military encounters with unidentified flying objects is woefully ill-equipped and improperly staffed to tackle its new mission. Moreover, the initiative threatens to derail a congressional proposal that would mandate unprecedented government transparency on UFOs. So basically, it's just saying the AOI MSG, the Pentagon office that they're talking about, would undermine the Gillibrand Rubio amendment, which is something we're really hoping passes. In an interview, Luis Elizondo, and this was an interview conducted on Saturday with Elizondo, according to Marik. I asked him when the interview was done. He said Saturday. So Elizondo gave him these quotes 5 days ago, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, 4 days ago. In an interview, Luis Elizondo, the former head of an informal DoD unit that assessed military UFO reports, told me he had deep reservations about the office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security, leading a government effort to investigate the UFO phenomenon. Right off the bat, I'm sure people are going to say, wait a second, informal DoD unit? Whether it's informal or formal, they studied UFOs. Okay, I don't know every detail. As I said last night and other nights, Lou said they had funding. We just don't know where that funding came from as of this time. People want to get into every little detail. That's fine, but to undermine Lou, I think that's a mistake, because between Lou and Mellon, that's why we're here. Without those guys, I'm not even doing this right now. So Cookie says hello to everybody too. Okay. I see the comments, but I want to keep going. And I'll stop for questions. According to Elizondo, UFOs are, quote, not solely an intelligence issue. If we want 70 more years of secrecy on this topic, then OUSDI&S is the perfect place to put it. They've had 4 years so far, and we have little in the way of efforts serving the public interest. This goes along with what he was saying in his tweets, but it's nice to see it in the Hill. Obviously, I'd rather see it in the New York Times or the Washington Post. No offense to the Hill or Marik. It doesn't have as much punch, but it's out there. So, and we have more stuff going on later on that I can show you. If you've been on Twitter today, this is not going to be new to you. Referring to pending legislation drafted by Senator Kirsten Gillibrand that would mandate unclassified reporting on UFOs and revolutionize the government study of the phenomena, Elizondo believes that, quote, if we want meaningful change and transparency, then we should keep the spirit of the Gillibrand Amendment. Christopher Mellon, who ran OUSDI's predecessor organization during the Clinton and George W. Bush administrations, echoed Elizondo's concerns. And this is from Elizondo's letter to Congressman Ruben Gallego out of Arizona. He wrote a letter to him and he put it on his blog, on his website. So that's what Marik is quoting from. Mellon expressed shock that OUSDI is taking on a permanent mission to analyze UFO encounters. As Mellon notes, his former office is an oversight versus an operational organization with no relevant funding, line authority, contracting command, or technical capabilities to execute the kind of robust UFO investigations Gillibrand's bipartisan legislation demands. I'll stop if there's anything you guys have to say. Hey, Tom, good to see you. What's up, Chris? Hi, Alistair. Good to see you. The Hill, Marik has been great with these op-eds. So hopefully it's kind of I'm surprised we haven't gotten more of this reporting. I'm not shocked, but I'm surprised since they jumped on the bandwagon in 2017 and along the way, more people haven't reported on this, but that's just the way it is. So, like Elizondo, Mellon believes the inability of, I don't want to have to keep saying OUSDI, but so the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense to engage effectively on the UFO issue is why so little has changed or been accomplished since 2004. Mellon's reference to 2004 is not accidental. That November, 4 naval aviators observed a mysterious flying object. So he's talking about the Tic Tac. I'm not going to read everything. That's why Mellon referred to 2004, because of the Tic Tac case. Intelligence analyses of the encounter ruled out highly advanced Chinese or Russian aircraft for plausible explanations. For their part, the aviators who observed the object believed that it was not from this world. And I've said before, that's not irrelevant that they don't think it's from this world, but that's not the be all end all as far as the possibility that it's black technology. I don't put the possibility of black technology high on the list. It's on my list. It's a very small list. I think it was, if somebody said you need to bet, I'm like, all right, I would bet it's not human technology, but I still leave open the door for black technology. But the fact that Commander David Fravor said he didn't think it was from this world, unless he's read into every program that we have, it doesn't really mean as much. If Luis Elizondo, who has, according to himself, been read into a lot of programs, says that, that's another story. So I give Lou's opinion more weight on that. I agree, Tom. It's important that the Hill had it. The Hill's been doing great work. I still would rather see the New York Times or the Washington Post or the Wall Street Journal, but we take what we can get for now. The 2004 incident was not an isolated event. In recent years, military personnel briefed members of Congress and spoke publicly about encounters involving unidentified objects operating with apparent impunity in sensitive airspace. Moreover, reports from multiple highly credible observers of mysterious, intelligently controlled craft exhibiting extraordinary technologies date back to the 1940s. It's important when you read his articles, he links back to older articles, important pieces of information that show the origin of these reports going way back. And that's what's so great about his articles. You won't see that in a lot of articles, but he goes out of his way to put really important links to really important information. If people who are new to it, if there are people who are new to this, those links will help a lot. With noteworthy parallels to recent intelligence assessments, declassified government analyses from 1947 to 1952 suggested extraordinary explanations for the most compelling UFO encounters. But after Cold War national security fears sparked 7 decades of government obfuscation, derision, and belittling of UFO reporting, Elizondo is not convinced that burying this issue in the deep, dark bowels of the Pentagon under an intelligence organization is the best way to shed light on a topic that needs a whole of government approach. And by the way, there are people who just listen to my YouTube stuff, so it's kind of like driving along with my voice. So I know for some people it's boring to read an article that you've already read, so I understand if you tune out. But I definitely want to read it for those folks, and I will definitely jump in and offer opinions. And I'm looking at comments as I'm reading too. Tom says the Pentagon is going to fight the Gillibrand Amendment tooth and nail. Yeah, and it's going to be up to Congress how strong they can fight back. That's what it's going to come down to that. And there are people supporting the Gillibrand Rubio Amendment, but it needs to be a lot of people. They need to push hard, and it's not a done deal yet. I mean, it should pass, according to Douglas Dean Johnson, who covers. He's very familiar with Washington, and he says he thinks it will make it in there. But the question is, how much of it will make it in there? You know, we need to have health-related effects, crash retrievals, the stuff that really made us excited when we saw it. So, likening the UFO problem to climate change, where the government brought people in from the outside to serve in an advisory role and capacity, did Lou actually compare it to climate change? Because I remember a recent interview, I'm pretty sure somebody said, do you think there's any connection between UAP and climate change? And I think that the person was trying to say, since our climate is going to hell and the environment, that maybe whoever is behind the UFOs is upping their game, making themselves more, more obvious, and that's why they're showing up more. But Lou said no. As far as I know, there's no connection. But this is not the same exact thing. He's just saying, as far as handling the problem, we should tackle it the way we would handle climate change. He says, we brought in people from the outside to serve in an advisory role and capacity. Elizondo believes the involvement of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, FAA, academia, and the scientific community, as mandated by Gillibrand's proposed legislation, is of critical importance. I'm going to slow down. According to Elizondo, we've had 70 years to try to figure out the UFO problem out as a government while keeping it in the halls of secrecy, and we haven't come any closer to figuring it out. Why are we going to repeat the same mistake all over again? Are we crazy? That's the very definition of insanity. Have we not learned? That's exactly. I mean, it's when people criticize Lou and suggest he's some sort of PSYOP officer. Come on. If he is, he wins PSYOP Officer of the Century. I will make the award myself. While praising Deputy Secretary of Defense Kathleen Hicks's attention, and by the way, the person I spoke to when I asked one person about this, AOI MSG, they didn't think Hicks was like intentionally trying to cut the legs out from Gillibrand Rubio. Like, it wasn't something nefarious. That's what the person told me. But it's still, you're basically still ignoring that legislation. So I don't know if she was just following orders. But Lou says he praises her. He says praises her attention to the UFO issue, but he expressed concern that Hicks is being hoodwinked by certain elements and members of her own staff. So she probably doesn't really realize what's going on. But after all of this is in the news, hopefully she starts paying attention. According to Elizondo, if Hicks had the complete picture, she would not have made the decision to place the UFO mission under the purview of OUSDI. So let's get her. Is there any way to get her briefed? And if there is, then they should do it. Thanks, Jade. I know a lot of people are not on Twitter. I'm going to try to do this as much as I can. When Elizondo was pressed on his reservations over OUSDI, and I'm leaving out the S, it's just quicker. His reservations over them tackling the UFO problem, Elizondo pointed to a combination of ineptitude, moral objection to the topic, and classic stigma and taboo. Expanding on this point, Elizondo stated, documentation exists that, if made public, would illustrate the sense of urgency and the need for a neutral, unbiased, and objective office to investigate the UFO phenomenon. So documentation exists. What else? I mean, why can't that documentation be shown? Is it something only he was able to see because of his special access? He was read into certain programs where he saw that documentation. And if not, then get get the person who has the right clearance to look at that documentation. Elizondo also mentioned his resignation. Let me just read that one more time. Expanding on this point, Elizondo stated documentation exists that, if made public, would illustrate the sense of urgency and the need for a neutral, unbiased, objective office to investigate the UFO phenomenon. I wonder what would illustrate the sense of urgency if this has been going on since, let's say, 1945, and we're talking about Trinity, the crash that happened then. Just let's pick that date. What's going on as far as besides an uptick in activity over the last couple of years? If I'm somebody in Congress, I'm like, why should I act now? I mean, this has been going on for so long, and really nothing has changed. So I'm playing devil's advocate. I'm just wondering what would be in that documentation to show that we need to act now. I'm looking at quotes. Stephen Bassett says the Hills is read by everybody in government, so this piece should get attention. That's great. Yeah, I'm glad. That's a good thing, David. Thank you. Elizondo has mentioned his resignation in protest over the lack of high-level attention toward the issue, saying, In some cases, there are individuals who have taken it personally that I left in the manner that I did, and they want this entire topic to go away. If that's the only reason why they want this topic to go away, that's pretty, I don't know what the word is, but that's ridiculous. I could see, they think there's a group that thinks this is demonic, we'll get to that. But they're mad over the way he left, so they're going to ignore UFOs. Sorry, that's like, and I won't mention names, but earlier when Skinwalkers at the Pentagon came out, somebody said, and I was like, why aren't you covering this? They're like, and I mentioned all the people that work for this organization, and they said, well, those people really don't like you, so they're probably even going to go out of the way even more to not cover it. I'm like, that's not professional. If you have readers who are interested in the UFO subject, you educate them and let them know what's going on. Skinwalkers at the Pentagon is one of the most important books, in my opinion, in recent years, and since I've gotten into the subject. So to not educate your listeners because they don't like me, that's kind of like Lou saying, well, they were mad that I resigned improperly, so they're not going to cover UFOs. They don't want anything to do with it. Seems very immature. From a strategic perspective, Elizondo believes that senior OUSDI staff want to focus on the threats that they can define, not the threats that are undefined. According to Elizondo, we in the DoD are very good at addressing defined threats, whether it's weapons of mass destruction or terrorism or stabilization operations. But when you get to something that is ill-defined, where we don't know what it is, we don't know where it's from, we don't know what its capabilities are, we don't know what its intent is, and we don't know who's behind the wheel. That is really a really tough topic to tackle from a national security perspective. But just because we don't know the origin of UFOs doesn't mean we should keep burying our heads in the sand. Elizondo also expressed concerns over government transparency, stating that there is plenty of documentation substantiating that certain elements of OUSDI have not been forthcoming. Man, I would love to see those documents. That's one of the reasons why there's a DoD Inspector General evaluation to determine how they are handling, or in this case, mishandling the UFO topic over the last 4 years. I think it goes way beyond the last 4 years. This is the same office that has bungled up the UFO issue so badly and has been telling people nothing to see here, to include not just senior DoD leadership, but also the Department of Defense Inspector General and even Congress. So let me just read that one more time. This is the same office that has bungled the UFO issue so badly, has been telling people nothing to see here. So they've been telling DoD leadership that, they've been telling the DoD Inspector General that, and they've been telling Congress there's nothing related to UFOs that you should care about. When I talk to certain elements within Congress, they all say the same thing, that the OUSDI support has been underwhelming, while noting that there are competent, patriotic civil servants in OUSDI. Elizondo believes that certain senior leaders in the office are operating in a manner that is not consistent with the agenda that Congress has for the American people. Not consistent with the agenda that Congress has for the American people. So, moreover, Elizondo believes that these career OUSDI officials do not want the UFO issue going public, because then they're going to have to unwind the tape and admit to a lot of people that they have not been telling the truth on this topic. In other words, they've been lying to us for a long time, a small group of people. Referring in part to sudden Pentagon denials that he managed the Pentagon's informal UFO analysis unit, Elizondo anticipates further reprisals for speaking out. And I'm going to take a little break. Thanks, guys, for watching, listening. I know this is not popular for most Twitter folks because they've seen a lot of this and read these articles, but I know the YouTube crowd will grow over time, because I know Twitter is not looked upon so highly, but you can still go on Twitter, follow me and a handful of people like David Haith, and get some great information, up to date too. We get stuff really quick. I know it's not really important to be quick. It's more important to be accurate, but sharing information, Twitter is a great tool for that. Elizondo expressed cautious optimism that Senator Gillibrand's historic bipartisan UFO legislation would become law, saying, I think we're in a good spot. I think we've come a long way. There seem to be a lot of people really trying to get behind this in a productive, not in a sensational way. According to Elizondo, members of Congress are taking a huge risk by even considering this particular topic. There are people who tend to be risk averse to begin with, and yet they're willing to put their credibility on the line. This is the most important part of the article. What does that tell you? He asked. That tells you that they've seen information that is compelling enough that they're willing to do what's necessary. So that's the end of that article. So what have they been shown? Have they been shown the 23-minute video that we've all heard about? I don't know. I don't know exactly what they've seen. You know, Bob McGuire has said that some of it was sci-fi stuff, some of the videos that they saw. So obviously we want to see that. I see no reason why any of those people can't describe what they saw. If they were shown videos, of a 23-minute video and other videos that showed craft making maneuvers that appear to be anti-gravitic, I don't see any reason why they can't go to a reporter and say, this is exactly what I saw, because it's not giving away sources and methods, not showing you anything in the cockpit on the FLIR. It's not showing you how the F-18 or whatever sensor picked it up. It's not showing you any of that. They should be able to describe it. And that's something whoever interviews Lou, which I would love to do one day, should ask him that and, say, why can't they talk about it? That shouldn't be classified. Talking about the closest who came to that was Senator Martin Heinrich came close to that. So, but nobody else has. And if you guys have any questions before I move on to some of my tweets with some videos, let me know. The Air Force goes way back. It's only speculation, but Air Force probably doesn't want this to come out because they're going to look really bad. Since they were in charge of a lot of this, as Drew said, the Navy, the Navy's been forthcoming. Also, the Air Force, I think in 2020, they had a new program put in place where, pilots are more encouraged to come forward, but I don't know how much fruit that is, brought forth. I don't know if that's really happening, if they're talking. But let me go. I'm sure in certain interviews, Eric Davis and Hal Puthoff has alluded to, there are certain Air Force people who have come forward. I don't know how many, not like, I don't know how many, I don't even know how many Navy folks have done it behind the scenes that we haven't even heard about. Let me go to some of the good stuff on Twitter today. They're saying the NDAA may not pass until 2022 now. That's fine. I mean, Douglas Dean Johnson, just follow him. He's like, he's still confident it will make it in there. I mean, we're in December right now, so 2022 is right around the corner. As long as it makes it in there, and as long as they have a UFO office that goes and investigates cases, looks into human-related injuries or human-related effects, and investigates whether or not we have crash retrievals, which obviously is a pipe dream and something I never thought I'd see in there, but that's what we need. But we'll see. 2022 is fine. Let me go through some of these. Let's see. Well, there were some videos, and there's Douglas Dean Johnson, who's been great on this, saying just stay the course, continue to urge those who represent you in Congress to support inclusion of the Gillibrand-Rubio Amendment. Don't get wrapped up in arcane legislative mechanics. There'll be reports like, oh, it's not going to make it in here, and it's not going to do this. And Ryan Bender said, I understand there are behind-the-scenes negotiations to get something on the final bill, not in this Senate version. So, and that's where Douglas Johnson is like, just relax, folks. We will get what we're looking for. Obviously, it's not guaranteed until it happens. So let me go back to earlier in the day. I will try to play all the videos I had starting with, actually, I was right where I was. That's from last night on my other feed from last night. So just some tweets from folks saying when you consider everything, when you consider everything, it becomes clear. Hold on. When you consider everything, it becomes clear without Lou or Mellon's experience in understanding DoD's actions or lack of on UAP, this movement wouldn't be no further ahead today than 4 years ago with a little help from this feisty community. Boots on the ground leadership. Yes, Lou and Chris. That's why now. Why now? That's the answer. And then Sean from Witness Citizen posted this. He said, this is from, I don't know what year this is from. 19, I don't know. He says, when you're on a UFO investigation, your team needs to have a Geiger counter, a camera, a tape recorder, binoculars, and a magnifying glass, which I told him I would get at Walmart. That is my confirmation picture from when I was 15, because I was telling people I didn't want to go on camera because I have lockdown hair, which is similar to that hair. And I told my mother, I'm like, how the hell did you let me walk around with that hair? How, Mom? I mean, that's embarrassing. So anyway, let's get to some of the videos that we're playing. All right. So this is Senator Thieme Burchett. This is, let me know. Let me make sure that I get the audio on this because we have some audio clips coming up and I really want to make sure you can hear them. Just give me 1 second. Share screen, that Twitter audio. Here we go. Okay. Let me play this audio. If you have any problems hearing it, let me know. I'm going to put headphones on this so I don't echo.
The report raised more questions than answers. Last summer's UFO report, Mr. Speaker, from the Director of National Intelligence was bogus.
Just let me know if you guys can hear that. If you can't, let me know.
Last summer's UFO report, Mr. Speaker, from the Director of National Intelligence was bogus. The report raised more questions than answers and about unidentified objects in the skies. It stunk of a government cover-up, Mr. Speaker. Now the Pentagon is starting a new office to collect information on these unidentified objects. The office is called the Airborne Object Identification and Management Synchronization Group. I don't know where they came up with that name. I'm sure they paid somebody a lot of money to come up with that. I do not trust this new office, Mr. Speaker. I don't think it'll be transparent with lawmakers or the public about its findings. This is a national security issue. Congress needs to know what is going on so we can respond accordingly. Today, I'm requesting the leaders of this new office bring members of Congress on their bring them in on their UFO findings. This is a matter of great public interest and has been for a very long time to a lot of Americans. Our government should not hide the truth from us for another second. If this new office is to be held accountable, our country will get more reports like the one that came out last summer, or worse, they will be silent and hope we all just forget about the phenomena. We do not need to fear these airborne and unidentified objects.
I don't know where he's getting that from. We do not need to fear these unidentified flying objects. We have no idea if we need to fear them or not. Hopefully we don't, but if you read Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, if you see a UFO, and Hal Puthoff said this a couple of years ago when he lectured here in Vegas, if you see a landed UFO, just keep your distance. I don't know who said it. I think it was Kelleher in a recent interview. Somebody asked him, it was a good question. Did you guys determine a certain distance there was to be away from the UFO where you would not get injured and not have these injuries? And he said, we don't have enough data on that, but there were people that were far away and still had injuries. So UFOs can possibly be bad for your health if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, or if an orb flies through your body, like supposedly happened in the Oregon case. But as far as overall what it means for the human race, I have no idea. I don't think he does either.
They would have shown themselves to fear these airborne and unidentified objects. They would have shown themselves to be dangerous a long time ago by now if they were a threat. Our citizens and country can handle the truth, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the remainder of my time.
I remember it was Christopher Mellon said, after John Podesta said, the American people can handle the truth. And Mellon jumped in and said, how do we know if they can handle the truth when we don't know what we're dealing with? What if they're flesh-eating arachnids? But I'm not really criticizing. People are like, oh, just give him a break. He's talking about UFOs on the floor of Congress. I'm like, yeah, of course, I support this. Just pointing out we don't know as far as I'm glad he's speaking out. I don't want to do anything to stop him, but I don't want people to get the wrong impression who are first getting into this. Oh, they're here to help us, obviously. There's nothing negative about UFOs. I just don't think we should be saying that. Any comments on Tim Burch? Yeah, I just played it, Walker. It's great that he's speaking up. I'm not sure if he's enough to get this ball rolling. We need senators. No offense to congressmen. We need a bunch of senators. We need Kirsten Gillibrand to speak publicly like that. Why she hasn't yet, I don't know. I mean, kind of know, but probably stigma still. I mean, she's been interviewed about it. She's spoken about it. Let me just go through some of your comments. Burchett was the only senator to call into the unidentified celebrity reviews big phone home. I like that he's speaking up, but don't take this the wrong way. But I'd rather have Senator Gillibrand, Senator Rubio, those guys. Warner. We need those guys. Bob said members that had the classified briefings were gobsmacked. That's the word, gobsmacked. Thanks, Walker. I wish Joe, that's me, or someone else would interview Dr. Ken Johnson, who mapped the moon and saw the scrubbing by NASA. I listened to many Ken Johnson interviews back in the day, Mule, so I know who he is. I'm trying to think if there was anything else he talked about that was really controversial that made me avoid him. I don't remember. I remember he would go on Coast to Coast with Art Bell and with Richard Hoagland, and I think Hoagland talked about what Johnston had found on certain NASA photos that Johnston said he was working at a university and NASA was going to throw them out. I think they were like, yeah, just toss them in the garbage, and he saved them. Really high quality pictures that supposedly showed stuff on the moon. And Tom says, a government history of UFOs, Blue Book report number 14. Condor report negative, Robertson report negative, Roswell report negative, Roswell report 2 negative, GAO investigation negative. Was GAO the one with Stephen Schiff, Congressman Schiff, where they told him, sorry, the Roswell records were destroyed, sorry, or they're missing? I forget which one it was. Did somebody say Burchett still thinks Trump won the last election? Somebody said that. I don't know if that's true or not, but let's not be beggars can't be choosers, David. We'll take all the support we can get. We just don't talk about the other stuff. As long as he's not telling us that vaccines will implant a chip in you, I think I'm okay with him. If he supported Trump, people know most people know how I felt about that, but I don't even want to go there. Left versus right. And I know that's not a left versus right issue, but I'm trying not to get political whatsoever. I don't think she was iced by the leader of the Senate. The leader of the Senate is Warner, I believe. He's the majority leader. He's supported UFOs. And then Rubio's right below that. Yes, Stephen Schiff. Schiff, sorry. So this was today. I retweeted it with audio. Oh, this is some of the stuff that's going on with Carrion from MUFON, which I do want to cover. But here is Burchett's letter to the Undersecretary Moultrie. He goes, and he put this up on Twitter. So he's been pretty active with showing people. I don't know if he thinks it's a winning political effort. I'm not sure if this is a winning political effort. With UFO Twitter, it is, obviously. I don't think it's negative, though. Although I've seen other people say, why are you wasting time on this when we have COVID, we have climate change, why are you playing around with UFOs? That's why I think the injury aspect should be talked about a little more without scaring people. Like, hey, we need to take care of our citizens. So this should be a priority. That's just one angle. So he goes, Dear Undersecretary Moultrie, thank you for and this is Burchett. Thank you for your ongoing attention. He posted this today to the presence of UAP in our airspace. I write today requesting increased transparency into the matter. The June 21st preliminary assessment released by the Office of DNI provided few answers and raised more questions. The American people deserve to know whether we are alone in our galaxy. Of course, we may not even be visited by something. It may be something that's on this planet. None of these folks, none of the scientists, none of the articles I read ever mention that possibility. You have Lou mentioning it, but it's always mentioned as ET. So I was disappointed that the UAP task force lacked the sufficient data for an all-encompassing analysis. I'm not sure what data they lacked. I'm sure they don't. I know they don't have everything, but what was did when members of Congress were briefed, did they get to see everything that the UAP task force had? I hope so, but we all know the good stuff is not there. The good stuff is buried deeper than that. Before I forget, somebody who did have access to certain data said the data that they saw did not show that UFOs are coming from deep space. It would point towards something between the moon and here, like nothing beyond the moon, nothing deep space. That doesn't mean data doesn't exist that shows objects are coming in from deep space. It's just that they had not seen that data, and this person had access to data that we do not have access to. So just keep that in mind. It doesn't mean there aren't objects coming from another planet that may be part of what's going on, and maybe all of what's going on. But at the surface level, more classified than we have access to, the data does not suggest that. So American people deserve to know whether we are alone in our galaxy. So I was disappointed that the UAP task force lacked the sufficient data for an all-encompassing analysis. It is incredibly problematic that we still do not know if these UAPs are simply airborne clutter, advanced adversarial systems, or even advanced technologies not of this world. However, I am encouraged that the newly established Airborne Object Identification and Management Executive Council is transitioning the UAP task force to the Airborne Object Identification and Management Synchronization Group. I don't know why the Gillibrand Amendment isn't mentioned in this letter. That's kind of surprising. He says, it's my hope that the AOI MSG will build off the preliminary assessment by collecting and analyzing all relevant data so we can get to the bottom of this phenomena. Therefore, I am requesting that the AOI MSG or the AOMEXEC brief members of Congress on their findings in a classified setting, followed by a public hearing before the relevant committees. Thank you for your service to the American people. I look forward to hearing from you soon. So he's requesting that they brief Congress. Yeah, let them do that. As far as a public hearing, I asked Doug Johnson about that. It's not so simple as Burchett calling for a public hearing. More has to go. He has to get support from some senior leadership. But, I'm happy he wrote the letter. And he was quoted back in the summer. It was June. And he also gave an interview. I have the whole TMZ interview, which I will play here with audio, but I'll look at questions in a second. I'm probably going to have to get through commercials first in the meantime. MSG. I know MSG is not good for us. Let's see. All right. Once the commercial's over, I'll get it. Tim had a letter to Congress as well. And so that's the letter I just read. I'm not a YouTube addict, but wish you were with more material. Oh, here we go. So this is from June 15th. No audio. Aye. So when I open up, all right, I can't play the whole thing. Darn it. All right, I'll play the clip that was on Twitter. It's not the whole clip, but at least you'll be able to hear it. Give me a second. I got to find the clip. If I can find it. So somebody was saying they wish I would be more on YouTube, but I mean, I'm trying to put all of my Twitter stuff I'm going through. It's hard to do it every day like this, but I'll try my best. There's a clip of Burchett, and of course I can't find it right now. It only lets you do. Sorry guys. I'm gonna have to come back to it. If you guys can ask any questions. In the meantime, ask questions and I will pull this up on another browser, and I think I can get audio that way. I'm trying to think what else went on today. There's still folks talking about PSYOP and Lou, and let me go to let's see if I can pull this up right now. You should be able to hear audio when I go to this. Problem is that is not the audio. That is not it. There we go. You guys have any questions? I'll try to get this audio up. Yeah. Have a night. Great night picks. Enjoy the show. And tell me,
Congressman, I know right now with President.
You hear that? Just tell me. Tell me if you hear that.
Biden, when he's going to speak to Putin, that he's talking. He's going to ask him about the UFO things, and stuff like that.
I think that's ridiculous. If the Russians had UFO technology, I mean, they would own us right now. They used to say that. I've heard people talk about how the Nazis had it in the Second World War. But if they did, they would have won. That is ridiculous. It has to be something that's out of our galaxy. It just has to be if it in fact is real.
And Congressman, you have always been a straight shooter. It's been like I know when it's been bipartisan, but the one thing I've noticed is. Doesn't matter which president it is. Nobody ever talks about the.
They always say they're going to do something about it, and then they get in office. And honestly, I thought Trump was going to do something. He was going to release the files, but they release these files are redacted. It's just a big blob of whiteout, and it's clearly something's going on that we can't handle. I mean, UFOs were in the Bible. Read Ezekiel. It talks about the wheel flying around. So I mean, they've been around since we've been around, and somebody needs to come up with some answers.
So even when something's supposed to be released coming up in a few weeks or months, what do you think is going to be in that?
I don't believe it. I think Roswell was covered up. I think, more people believe in UFOs than believe in Congress for good reason because of the jackleg stuff we do like that. We talk about we're going to release it and then we never do, or we release something that's so redacted that it's just ridiculous. The Air Force had a release on Roswell, which was the big deal, I think, from 48, and the big cover up there. And the guy that did it was a smart aleck, and he kind of smirked the whole time, and nobody took it serious. They ought to take it serious. The American public wants to know, and frankly, we deserve to know.
I think at some point it's gonna happen, man.
I think so too. I think they're going to release that. I think somebody's going to release stuff. The Kennedy assassination files. They're going to do it all, but we haven't had a president with enough guts to do it just yet.
So that is Burchett, and that was summer. That was June 15th. That was posted. And as far as, he said it has to be from another galaxy. Well, it does not have to be from another galaxy. And, he talks about, real quick, it's like a pet peeve of mine. He talks about Ezekiel's wheel, which people say that's in the Bible. Ezekiel's wheel is a UFO, but I don't think Ezekiel's wheel was a UFO. I think Ezekiel's wheel is a representation of the four corners of the zodiac when they describe the beings. And I put a link on Twitter. I'll put it in the show notes. I'll also put in the show notes the links to the articles that I'm reading from. We're not done reading from articles because I want to read the Billy Cox article. Yeah, well, the one good thing about Trump, and I'm not a Trump fan, and as far as this, I think Burchett was interviewed. I'm not really sure what else. I mean, I would rather interview Gillibrand. That's my target. That's who I want to hear from. I want to hear from her. She has not spoken out in any in-depth interview. I want to know if she was briefed on crash retrievals or if her staffers were briefed on crash retrievals. What can she tell us about? Trump did nothing, the same thing our ex-presidents have done. But one good thing Trump did, and I'm not a Trump fan, but he did give an interview to Stephanopoulos in the Oval Office about UFOs and said he was briefed. Even though when he asked if he believed his pilots were seeing UFOs, he said, not particularly. So, did not like that, but at least he did that. But yeah, I mean, I was hoping he would put out some more information. So what else was talked about today on Twitter? Here's an article that Ross Coulthart put out. Somebody who used to be with the Office of the Department, the DNI, Science and Technology, Director of National Intelligence, and they were talking about the report at the end of the article. This was in Psychology Today, which is a mainstream psychology magazine online. I think they also have a physical magazine saying, and at the end he says, someone somewhere appears to have science that is out of this world. So that's great to see somebody like that. He was, like I said, former Pentagon Office of Director of National Intelligence, Science and Technology, the head of that department, talking about the June report, the 180-day report. So that's another scientist. And that's when I asked Dean earlier. I said, I asked Dean Johnson, who knows how Washington, D.C. works. I said, if Burchett calls for public hearings like he did, what needs to take place for that to happen? And Dean said a chair of a panel with jurisdiction would decide and probably need to sign off from top leadership of the House. But hearings without adequate groundwork, he thinks that's reckless. It's a half-baked quasi hearings in the 60s that led to the disastrous Condon report. He thinks focusing now should be on legislation. Gillibrand and Rubio. I'm fine with that. I mean, I do want to see public hearings at some point. I'm fine focusing on legislation.
The lives of all of us.
And for the umpteenth time in as many years.
The lives of...
So somebody posted this from 66. And once again, let me know if there's no audio. A 1966 CBS TV special. It's only a minute.
All of us.
And for the umpteenth time in as many years, the Air Force, called before a congressional committee, said it was hiding nothing. Air Force Secretary Harold Brown.
We have not been hiding anything. The investigations have been made public. The explanations of those where there is a clear explanation have been made public. The hearing this morning was public for just that reason. In those cases where for lack of data or lack of a convincing hypothesis, the sighting has been kept in the unidentified category, we've been perfectly willing to say that too.
But if the Air Force had nothing to hide, Frank Manor, the Michigan farmer who had brought in the first report, was caught in the middle. He was mad.
Well, you can look at here. Look, beer bottles thrown. Look at my windshield. What would you think if somebody was throwing beer bottles at your house, standing out in the middle of the road screaming, you nut, you're fanatic, and all that? What would you think?
Are you sorry now that you did tell people what you saw?
Yes, I am. I am sorry because not that it's not the truth, but it's just the idea that.
So that was 1966. And getting to some of your comments, I can back up a little bit, which StreamYard is not good for. Yeah, as far as Rubio, I'm extreme left, so it doesn't matter. Rubio's been pretty vocal about this, and I support that. I don't know, maybe he thinks it's a winning. If whatever he's seen if we get to see it, he'll realize that the world, not just Americans, will realize how important this is. And maybe Gillibrand is doing that too. I don't know. She ran for president in 2020. She's probably going to run again. And I think Rubio will run. And like the perfect scenario is something leaks out that convinces enough people that there's something serious about this. And then they start battling on how much, who could give the most disclosure for UFOs. Let's have a political battle. That's my my dream. So I'm sorry, I'm trying to keep up with the comments. It's hard to go back. As far as Trump thinking that what he was shown was Chinese drones, yeah, I know what Green Street thinks. There's no evidence that I know of that the West Coast events specifically were drones. 2019, a person I spoke to basically said, and you could say I was given disinformation if you want, but I was basically told if it was China or Russia, we would tell you. We're not going to go out of our way to lie like this. They think those objects are totally unexplained, true unknowns. So the West Coast stuff. And let's see. Let me take that down. I'm a classic liberal, or whatever people want to label me today. Rubio is after the presidency and would talk to a point. Yeah, I think that's fine. I think this supersedes any political talk. Like I said, I'm pretty far left on most stuff, not everything, most stuff. And let me get back to some of the tweets. Also, one of the articles I do want to get to is Billy Cox, which he wrote. He's the most underappreciated, undervalued writer, reporter on these subjects. He's somebody who did a lot of work on Wilson Davis. Let me get to his article. I'm trying to see if there's any more videos. Here's something that Jeff tweeted. He said, he goes, thank you, Mr. Burchett. I just received a call while driving from my senator here in the Midwest that he was holding a live town hall. So I called in and asked about his position on UAP transparency. He also was open-minded and supportive of ongoing UAP efforts. Encouraging. Hopefully there's a recording of that. Usually, I don't think they always tape their town halls. I would love to hear that. But yeah, the more open-mindedness, the better, obviously. Let's see. Yeah, somebody, when I said that Ezekiel's wheel represents the zodiac, they're like, they were like, are you serious? But I'm not talking about horoscopes. I'm talking about if you know about the great year, Plato talked about the great year. There's a great documentary, The Great Year, from James Earl Jones. He narrates it. And it's basically, there's a 25,000, I think it's like 26,000 years, 25,920 years. It goes in a big circle procession. The earth is angled, I think, at 23.5 degrees. And if you look up in the sky, you look at a star, it'll go around in a big circle and it'll take 26,000 years. And you divide that into 12, which is 2,160 years each age. So you got the age of Taurus, the age of Pisces, the age of Aquarius. That's what that is. It's basically a way to keep track of time, long form time. So, if there are certain things that are cyclical on this planet, that's the way you would keep track of it. Whether or not that's why it's everywhere. The zodiac is everywhere around the globe. And the precession stuff is embedded in so many myths for thousands of years. Why were they so obsessed with that? That's something that maybe it's connected to what we're dealing with on this planet as far as UFOs. I don't know, but it's something I really have an interest in. I'm not going to put up criticism of Rubio. I can criticize. There's so many politicians I can criticize. And I was not a Rubio fan, but he spoke out about it. So, all right, I'm trying to see what else. Let me read the Billy Cox article. Let me get rid of this, because I said Billy Cox really did a great job. Give me 1 second. Let's see. Billy, here we go. Okay. Billy Cox used to work for the Sarasota Herald Tribune, and he had a blog. I'm drawing a blank what his blog was called, but his big thing is he calls this the great taboo, UFOs. There's some things I do not agree with in this article, which I will point out. Not from Billy, though. Congress is on the brink of passing, well, maybe some things. Congress is on the brink of passing legislation that could break the military. Intelligence Military intelligence stranglehold on the truth about UFOs. Will lawmakers have the resolve to pull the trigger? And I think Billy's pretty encouraged that this is going on right now. Like I said, he did some amazing work on Wilson Davis. He has quotes from Oak Shannon, who was connected to Wilson Davis, and he interviewed Tom Wilson, who gave Billy a really detailed denial about meeting with Eric Davis back in 2002, which I don't believe. But Eric Davis, Billy Cox just did amazing work, just calling as many people as he could who were listed in the Wilson Davis documents. Just real fast. Just one quote. Coin exchange, because I know I'm going to lose your quote if your comment. Ezekiel's wheel was under the control of 4 angels, nothing to do with the zodiac. Okay. Can't prove that. I can't prove my zodiac theory either, but I'll link to the article about the zodiac and people can read it and decide for themselves. There's so much astrotheology in the Bible and other sacred texts. It's not just the Bible. And like I said, the zodiac, I remember going to a church in Norway, in Oslo. It was outside of Oslo. And there was this giant rendition. It was like a 3D. It wasn't a drawing. It was like a physical object. And it was the zodiac. It was in the middle of the church. And I asked the person who worked there, my girlfriend at the time, I said, ask him, what is this? What is this? Why is the zodiac in the middle of your church? And the guy answered, he said he didn't know. He probably wasn't like the leader of the church, but somebody who worked there did not know. The zodiac is everywhere. And down in town square in the middle of Oslo, you look up at this clock. Oh, look, it's the zodiac. It was everywhere. Anyway. So we're talking about Robert Powell. So Robert Powell works for the SCU, the Scientific Coalition for this. I don't know their exact name. It's study of ufology, and they're mentioned in the Gillibrand. They're mentioned in the Gillibrand legislation. So Billy writes, as he waits to see if Congress really will have the guts to alter the course of history and authorize an official, no bull jive subpoena power investigation into UFOs, Robert Powell remembers being shocked in a good way when the news quietly broke last month. I wasn't shocked, but I was surprised. I did not expect Senator Gillibrand. What the hell? Where'd that come from? Senator Gillibrand's blockbuster addition to the NDAA was dead serious. It pitched, among other things, bringing honest brokers into the discussion, including the nonprofit Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies, SCU. There's the name. SCU had no prior discussions with government types, says executive board member Powell. So how did the SCU make it into Gillibrand's amendment if they didn't have any discussion with any government types? That's really odd. Somebody who had the ear of Gillibrand obviously was aware of them and liked their work. So they were mentioned as being part of that office. But they didn't have any contact with folks. And yet on November 4th, there it was, a radical proposal to establish a formal UFO investigation office, the Anomaly Surveillance Tracking and Resolution Office, ASTRO. If sanctioned, SCU would join ASTRO's Aerial and Transmedium Phenomena Advisory Committee. That pending committee is a fast company list with seriously eclectic credibility, i.e. NASA, the FAA, the National Academy of Sciences, the National Academy of Engineering, the National Academy of Medicine, Harvard's Galileo Project, the American Institute of Astronautics and Aeronautics, Montana State's Optical Technology Center, and the American Society for Photogrammetry and Remote Sensing. Merry Christmas. Billy has humor when he writes. Yes, it's amazing. We need Gillibrand Rubio. Quote from Powell. I never thought I would live to see it get this far. I really didn't, says Powell, co-author of the largely overlooked radar-heavy spade work that exposed how a UFO flew unchallenged over George W. Bush's Texas ranch in 2008 while F-16 fighters backed off. And there's a link to the article. There's a link to that paper by Robert Powell, which I will put in the notes. It's a very in-depth look at the case in Stevensville, Texas. Did they say Stevensville here? But it happened it actually went over George W. Bush's ranch. And it's some of the best work that SCU has done. And Billy continues, that brand of informed curiosity at SCU has since produced forensic analysis of some high-profile cases, most prominently the Tic Tac from 2004 and the Aguadilla surprise, with video footage capturing trans-medium UFO behavior off Puerto Rico in 2013. And any comments about this? I'm just looking at comments, folks. Yeah, we'll see if the amendment will be watered down. I don't know. We'll see. Skinwalker, I don't think the folks in Congress are focused on Skinwalker whatsoever. But if they care about protecting people, their American people, from whatever these objects are, hell, if they need to argue this is a black technology, then make the argument. Then later on, if it's not black technology, well, at least we're actually studying this and helping people who are injured. Like I said, people have died from having up-close encounters with these objects. UFOs and government, people, and I will link to this one too. I need to read it. I have it. I've seen quotes. I've seen interviews with some of the people involved. Michael Vai told me about that book. I had never heard about it, Tom, until he told me. I'm like, how is this book new to me? It's such a great book. I mean, it's all government documents, and right, Tom? I think it's all government documents. It's something, if you're strictly conservative and just want to stick to government documents, I think that's the book to go for. And I need to read it. I believe the bill authorizes money for the paranormal. No, doesn't. It authorizes money for a field office to study human effects. And if they study, yeah, Tom says about that book, History of the Government Connection. I'll link to it. But Gillibrand does not authorize money for the paranormal. But if they have a field office and they go out and investigate cases and there are people who had close encounters, they're going to encounter people who have had paranormal experiences. And as Colin Kelleher said, if you follow these witnesses for a few days, you're probably not going to get those stories. If you follow them for a few weeks, a few months, a few years, he goes, that's when the stories come out as time goes on after their encounter. And then they'll open up more as time goes on, because they don't want to talk about the stuff, because even people in ufology have a problem with it. But it's happening. It's been happening for a long time. So anyway, let me get back to this article. Since the erosion of the stigma began in December of 2017, which is the New York Times article, multidisciplinary scientists have been flocking to SCU in hopes of bringing experience and intuition to bear on the puzzle. We've got about 170 members now, and about a third have PhDs in everything from physics to chemistry and astronomy, Powell says. And we haven't even tried to recruit people. I think Eric Davis is part of the SCU too. What's his name? Not Will. The other person who I know at SCU, drawing a blank, but he lives down in Alabama. And I know Eric Davis works in Alabama also at Aerospace. So they're not too far from each other. And I'm drawing a blank. Anyway, Powell, co-author of UFOs in Government, the book that Tom brought up, which is a book that everybody should read. And I'm telling you that without reading it, because the people who I know, like Michael Vai and Tom, are two top-notch people. If they say read a book, and I have the book, I've gone through it, I've seen lectures on the book and what was pulled from the book, certain quotes. I'm like, I had no idea that quote existed. So it's a very important book, in my opinion, as far as I could say without actually reading it. But I trust Tom and I trust Michael. Co-author of UFOs in Government, the granular history of how the U.S. wound up in the Gordian knot it's in now, Powell says SCU can bring the long view to the table for congressional audiences. If this pending milestone comes to pass, The NDAA awaits a vote, maybe this week. But even if Gillibrand's add-on survives, getting federal institutions to cooperate on these previously forbidden matters is bound to test the rigor of political folks playing the short game. And like I said, Billy's been at this for a really long time. Folks should sign up for his email alerts when he gets a new article out. He's one of the top people. You just don't hear about him because he doesn't promote his stuff. Rarely. He'll promote his stuff very rare. It's not Kevin Knuth. As far as this is the book that we're talking about. Like I said, I'll link to it in the show notes. It's not Kevin Knuth, SCU. It's I can't believe him. Rich Hoffman. So the dog's gonna go crazy. Let's see. I might have to stop in a second. Just take a little break. All right, so hold on. Ominously, just last week, in what appeared to be a good old-fashioned up yours to the congressional inquiry, that's Billy's humor there. Deputy Secretary of Defense Kathleen Hicks tried to turn the bipartisan amendments flank. Following 3/4 of a century without a coherent policy on UFO incursions into sovereign airspace, just 2 days before the Thanksgiving holiday, the Deputy Secretary of Defense announced the formation of something called the Airborne Object Identification and Management Synchronization Group. Take a big breath. Presented as the successor to the lightweight and congressionally mandated UAP task force, AOI-MSG is the basement hunchback version of the Gillibrand legislation. Its mission statement, according to the formal announcement, is to coordinate military and intelligence efforts to evaluate UFOs with zero stated interest in looking at civilian UAP incidents. AOI-MSG makes no mention of including a civilian scientific advisory board, no mention of briefings, classified or otherwise, to lawmakers. At a Monday press conference, the dissembling chores fell to Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby, who tried to sell AOI-MSG as a routine housekeeping measure. I can assure you, Kirby replied to a question about public accountability, that our intention is to be as transparent about this as we can, given that there will be national security considerations we will have to keep in mind. That's Billy. The most interesting line, and by the way, that was not an impersonation of Kirby. The most interesting language in the AOI-MSG directive calls for figuring out how to prevent or mitigate any risks posed by UFOs. Prevent or mitigate. How might we do that? Open fire with classified pulse weapons and get boomeranged to smithereens in broad daylight? Hey, can I please write that press release, please? Anyway, regardless of what happens with the bill, Powell says Capitol Hill still hasn't gone far enough. Not yet. And he's quoting Powell here. In order to avoid another repeat of the past, and Powell's somebody who's very well informed about the past, Congress really needs to take an additional step that we haven't taken yet. And that is they need to provide funds for academia to investigate the phenomenon. I totally agree. I would love, and I've said this and I'll continue to say it, I would love for the government not to be involved in any of this, except I want all of their data. That's what I want. I want all of the data to go to a private organization so we can study it and have weekly or monthly updates on what's going on and what's being found. So that's what he's saying. And he's saying, provide funds for academia to investigate the phenomenon. Powell says from Austin, Texas, where he is not in academia, because I've really kind of given up on any hope that the military and our government institutions will ever release all the information they have. He may be right. Doesn't mean we stop trying. We need to find out. Jeremy Corbell mentioned a specific area where this data warehouse exists. And by the way, the other day, another depressing note, an interview that Colm Kelleher did with the Paracast, he said that he thinks when the government went from physical files over to digital, that they may have gotten rid of a lot of UFO-related information, and that would be a disaster. If that happened, we'll never get that information back. To wit, in 2010, and this is where we start getting some stuff I don't agree with, but still a big fan of Billy's, and it's more of the quotes he got from somebody. In 2010, the Advanced Aerospace Weapon System Applications Program submitted the results of its 2-year, 22 million UFO study to the DIA, where it's been closeted in the dark ever since. And that makes the timing of the Pentagon's unpronounceable AOI MSG hoo-ha suspicious at best, Powell says. They waited until the Gillibrand Amendment came out before they moved on it, Powell says. It's like they read the language of the bill and said, wait a minute, this is really detailed. We won't have control of this anymore. There's a picture of Elizondo with Powell in the background with the glasses. That's from 2019, where the SEU hosted Lou, and he spoke, and I transcribed that entire lecture. I transcribed that entire lecture. It's on my website, on my blog. So that was in Huntsville, Alabama, 2019. If you look at Lukatsky's book, and this is Powell, and Lukatsky's book, he means Skinwalkers at the Pentagon. If you look at Lukatsky's book, it went through, and it's Lukatsky, Kelleher, and Knapp. Sorry. It went through government review for 14 months. Well, it was 14 months because of COVID. That was a big reason why it took forever. Powell goes on, it's poorly written. You have no real idea what they cut out of it, but you see this enormous appendix where they list all the reports they completed. I mean, I asked them about what, was left out that they could talk about. And they mentioned some of the things that were left out. Yeah, there's no specifics, but I guess they really can't tell you what was left out since they're not allowed to talk about it if they can't write about it. So that's, I assume, if they couldn't put it in the book because it was too sensitive, then it would not be good for them to also talk about it. So I really don't think it's poorly written. I just think their hands are tied. The book could have been many more books. They couldn't include everything. And I asked them about that when I interviewed Knapp and Kelleher. Powell says the one thing I'd love to get my hands on was where they used an engineering software program to estimate flight characteristics and acceleration similar to, and they say so in the book, what we did on the Nimitz case. I would love to see those numbers, but I'm just not optimistic. I also asked Kelleher if he thought any of that information would come out. It was kind of non-committal. I mean, they talk about getting rid of all the names because of privacy issues and HIPAA issues, but Robert Bigelow is the one that needs to be asked that question, and I don't have access to Bigelow. So Lukatsky's book, Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, co-authored by former OSAP director and retired DIA officer James Lukatsky, provoked a clamor when it was published in October and confirmed what longtime researchers like Mark Roediger have suspected for years. When I read the New York Times story in 2017, one of my first thoughts was, did they do a real in-depth scientific investigation? And if so, where's the report? Says the director of the Center of UFO Studies in Chicago. And now we learn from the book that yes, they absolutely did do an in-depth investigation. So where is that report? We're not allowed to see it. Yeah, exactly. We all have that. We all have that issue. We all want to see the reports. I don't know how we're going to get it. Even if they decide we have access to it and we can get access to it, they have to take all of those names out. And, and Kelleher said that the stuff was like 6 feet high of binders in his office. So it's a lot of work. They have to find somebody to take out all of those names. But Robert Bigelow is the one that needs to be asked about that. He's the one that has proprietary, the rights to that information. If it's not classified, he can put it out. But he just can't put it out and say, here you go. If there are names in there, if people gave their information and shared their experiences with the understanding that their names would not be released. You just can't put it out. So far, however, the most bizarre contents of the Lukatsky book, subtitled An Insider's Account of the Secret Government UFO Program, have stayed under the radar of mainstream media coverage, says Roediger, and that's probably a good thing, at least until after Congress takes action on the Gillibrand Amendment. I'm sure there are people in Gillibrand's office who know about some of the weird stuff that was reported. If they're talking about health-related effects, they probably have an idea of the other stuff. And if they don't want to talk about it right now, get this passed, all right? That's fine. Just let's get this passed. And then we can deal with that stuff later. I think it's something that needs to be talked about. I mean, if you want to understand what's going on, you just can't study nuts and bolts, in my opinion. So he continues, I'm worried about blowback, he says. When it becomes widely known about what's in there, I will be concerned because it doesn't present a lot of good, hard UFO data. They don't give out a lot of real names. Well, they had to take out names for anybody who was still active in the government or the military, or the world of intelligence. There are some real names in that book. If people look and Google, there are some real names. There's no documents are available for us to look at, and nothing can be checked. I knew it was going to include some stuff about Skinwalker Ranch. And anybody joining now, this is Billy Cox's article. I think it came out this morning. I knew it was going to include some stuff from Skinwalker Ranch, but it wasn't clear to me how much of the focus it was going to be until the book came out. Well, Skinwalker Ranch wasn't the focus of OSAP, and it's also not the focus of the book. I mean, the 5 DIA folks had an experience at Skinwalker and then took stuff home with them, but the book is not focused on Skinwalker Ranch. So I don't know what book he read. I don't agree with that. He says, now we learn that Lukatsky, he's thinking forwardly. He's thinking about threats to national security, but it all starts with Skinwalker Ranch, which actually has very little to do with UFOs. This guy probably has not read the book like he claims, or he doesn't know that Hunt for the Skinwalker, if you go back and read that, and you listen to Lukatsky's interviews, yes, Skinwalker Ranch has nuts and bolts, metallic craft being sighted there, and the other stuff that goes along with it. That's the history of UFOs. It's just something I never knew about, and I never read about until recently. And then I heard Eric Davis talking about any close encounters, you get poltergeist effects. It was new to me. And Jacques Vallée and Eric Davis wrote about similar in their 6-layer article, which I'll also link to that. But yes, their UFOs are connected to Skinwalker Ranch. So I don't know what he's talking about. The quote continues, there are lots of problems here, but what's missing is his thinking. Why would he think all that stuff at the ranch would relate to UFOs? That's really bad that this guy doesn't understand the connection between UFOs and Skinwalker Ranch. Read Hunt for the Skinwalker. Read Skinwalkers at the Pentagon. Listen to Lukatsky's interview. Listen to Keller's interview. Yes, there's 100% a connection. Listen to Brandon Fugel. Watch the show. They had UFO sightings as they were taping. Yes. So the question is, is the UFO phenomena at Skinwalker the same UFO phenomenon all over the world? Or is the intelligence, whatever is going on, and I'm speculating, whatever is going on at Skinwalker is just playing games. It could take any form it wants, and it's just trying to trick people into thinking there's a connection to nuts and bolts metallic UFOs. I don't think there's any trick going on. That kind of stuff has been reported, which I'm learning, for a very long time. So this is not really anything new, and this guy really needs to go back and read the book. I'm not saying, he goes, why would he think all that stuff at the ranch would relate to UFOs? I'm not saying it doesn't. I just want him to tell me what he's thinking about back then. Maybe that got taken out too. I don't think so. I mean, I'll have to go over the book again and find specifics. But anyway, during the 2008 to 2010 DIA investigation, UFO activity played second fiddle to a wild range of paranormal scenarios, bedeviling an isolated ranch in the Badlands of Northeast Utah, according to Skinwalkers at the Pentagon. So, yeah, this guy's saying most of the investigation dealt with stuff, not UFO activity. He's talking about the related paranormal stuff that people were experiencing. Stuff, that's a scientific term. And this is Billy writing. Most disquieting are accounts of dogmen or shadow people. I don't think dogmen are in the book, the new book. There are bipedal wolves that people had sightings of. Most disquieting are accounts of dogmen or shadow people following researchers home, and what the book likens to a social contagion or a hitchhiker effect. SCU's Powell calls those anecdotes meaningless for purposes of the immediate discussion. Immediate as of right now? Fine. as far as figuring out what the hell this phenomenon represents, extremely important. Even the anecdotes are important. We could figure out ways to somehow measure that scientifically, but the social contagion is not just in skinwalkers in the Pentagon. You read other books about poltergeists that I'm learning about. These people were suggesting that there is some sort of how it attaches to somebody and spreads. It's not a new idea. As George Knapp said, he recently thought it was a new idea until he read other literature. So it's not a new idea of this. And it's some of the cases are not UFO cases. They're places that allegedly had poltergeist activity, not UFO activity, but it's apparently spreading. How that works from a physics standpoint, no idea. But people are witnessing and experiencing that. So I think we'll have to look into that when we try to figure this out. I don't think it's, as most people like Jacques Vallée and John Keel, they don't think it's just ETs visiting, as if that wouldn't be amazing in itself. It would be, but I think it's more complicated, at least one aspect of what we're dealing with. There's nothing anywhere in the book to convince me that these wolf creatures or whatever that these wolf creatures or whatever have anything to do with UAP, he says. This is the guy from the Chicago UFO group, I believe. Or is this Powell? Let me just see. This might be Powell. Roediger. I'm trying to see where he switched over to Powell. Yeah, it's Powell. Powell says there's nothing anywhere in the book to convince me that these wolf creatures or whatever they have anything to do with UAP. There's no detailed data to suggest there's anything like a virus associated with this. If I'm going down that road, I would like to have known exactly when the first guy brought it back. I'm fine with that. I do want to know those details. But like I said, the case of bringing something back with you goes way back before this book, way back before the OSAP study. It's not something new. That's important. The book says not only did the guy's family start seeing things, but one of his son's friends started seeing things too. So that was a bipedal wolf. The wife saw it. Jonathan Axelrod comes home after going to Skinwalker Ranch. The wife sees a bipedal wolf out the window, scratch marks on the tree outside, and then doesn't say anything to anybody as far as the kids. Then the kid reports it, and then one of the kid's friends reports it. So Powell says, I want to know how many friends did he visit as far as Axelrod's son. When did he see them? How many of his friends had this experience? How long were they exposed to each other? And there's none of that. This is really like telling a story, somebody telling a story over a campfire. I don't disagree with that. I do want to know all of those details. I'm not sure why that's not in the book, why they could not include that in the book. Those are the details I do want to know. So at least Powell's asking that. He's not just totally dismissing it. He's just saying it comes across as a story and it's lacking details. Without the release of the voluminous UAP records compiled by the DIA more than a decade ago, speculation over the more sensational elements of a book produced by the former director of OSAP is a road to nowhere and potentially counterproductive for lawmakers already wary of little green men punchlines. I'm not sure if that's Powell saying that or Billy saying that, but I disagree with that. It's not. That's where it's going to head. Unfortunately, people, I would love for it to be something really simple that we could figure out. The fact that we haven't figured anything out, at least on the outside, I'm not talking about people who have access to data we don't have, but we don't know what the hell's going on after 70 years. I don't think it's so simple. I think it's very complicated, and we need to go down those roads. Keep your eye on the ball, says SCU's Powell. America's teetering democracy may never get another chance like this. Let's assume, for the sake of argument, that what we're dealing with is an extraterrestrial intelligence. Well, says Powell, the way we're positioned today when we make first contact with that intelligence, it's going to be through a military organization. And I mean, really, who wants a military organization, ours or anyone else's, to represent planet Earth if and when that happens? It should be more about something that represents the whole planet, because it's going to impact the entire planet. OAI MSG versus Astro? I don't see a reason for them to coexist, Powell says. Congress needs to make that decision. Congress needs to say, we will ultimately support the organization that controls the information for dissemination to the public. So that's Billy Cox's article from today. Now we'll go through some of your comments. Let's see. And I have the James McDonald book. Yeah, he had a clue supposedly, but we didn't get to hear what it was. He died. He killed himself. And yeah, I heard the same thing, Tom, that Powell is firm nuts and bolts, which I personally don't understand. I understand it, but it's like, to me, it's obviously there's so much more we're dealing with. David, I agree. There's no reason we can't see photos of the straps marks on the trees. Yeah, all of that stuff. That's up to Bigelow, though. But we could have gotten more details. There are details I would like to know exactly. How were they interviewed? If there are transcripts, I would love transcripts of the interviews with the son and the wife and the son's friends who saw the alleged bipedal wolf. The people laugh when they hear that, but it's like they said, I think Kelleher said, or Knapp, that they studied the area around Skinwalker Ranch, and that particular report is amazing, the details. And Lakatsky went into the Department of Homeland Security and let loose with everything, with detail after detail of odd creatures. And what I wouldn't give to be a fly on the wall in that, in that briefing that took place. That would be amazing. The fact that Lakatsky did that makes him my hero as far as ufological hero. For him to have the guts to talk about that with people at DHS is incredible to me. The 23-minute video would help. It's not Lou. Lou has no control. People need to realize Lou can't release videos unless Lou is working for the government at a level that we don't know. As far as we know, he doesn't work for the government. He's a contractor, but Lou has no control over releasing that information. And let's see, we've been going for an hour and a half, which I didn't plan to go that long, but I'll play something just really quick and let me know if you can hear it, but something a little different than what we're talking about, which is really, to me, I'm kind of surprised that it's this person was in charge of MUFON when they got the OSAP program. The OSAP, when OSAP contracted with MUFON, and this is James Carrion, and check out his comments that he was. So this was on the Showtime special. The Showtime special called UFO. It was a 4-part series. Before I get to that, I don't think DIA even cared. It was only because Harry Reid arranged it. Yeah, that's not what it says in the book. There are people in DIA that did care. But overall, I agree with you. But I don't know who those people are at DIA. I want to find out specifically. But yeah, I think overall you're right, Tom. If Harry Reid doesn't have an interest in the subject, thanks to George Knapp, and George Knapp doesn't write the book with Kelleher, and Lakatsky doesn't read the book and then go to Skinwalker Ranch, gets back to Reid, then yeah, this doesn't happen. I don't know where we would be right now. I don't know. We probably would not be having this conversation. I agree that the majority of DIA does not have an interest in this, but I would like to know how many people do. It was enough to get the program, funded, thanks to Reid, Inouye, and Stevens. But anyway, let me play some of this as a change of pace.
My belief, for my research, deception.
It's a 4-parter.
Release of that 2017.
There's one more clip from the. I guess that was it. So, yeah, Carry On is also taking shots at Skinwalker Ranch and Brandon Fugel, and I've stopped interacting with him. I'm sorry, I just have no time for somebody who's just one-sided. And I'm sure there's manipulation going on. To what degree, I don't know. But everything to him, it's like, and Skinwalker Ranch, he's not the only one. There are other people that think, oh, Skinwalker Ranch is all black ops. And they quote Kit Green, where Kit Green says, I don't need to jump to extraterrestrial technology to explain what's going on at Skinwalker. What the question would be, are you saying that whatever's going on at Skinwalker is human? I don't I don't think Kit Green would say that. So I think they manipulate that quote for their own purposes. But, listen to Erica Luke's show. She's 100% convinced, as far as I know, it's black technology. I don't think that's the case. And it's like here I am just trying to think of what the hell's going on. Not that I have a brain that could figure it out. And then there are people who are still wondering, well, is Elizondo, was he inflating his role at ATIP? And it's like, we're 4 years into this. I think we realize now OSAP was the program, but ATIP was also important for what its focus was on military. And now we have Congress talking about it. I don't see the PSYOP angle on what's going on. Maybe I'm naive, I just don't see it. And if it turns out to be I'm wrong, so be it. I just don't see it. It doesn't make sense to me. I'm using judgment. If there's something going on I don't know about, then so be it. The people I talk with, as I said, they don't tell me information that's outlandish. It goes along with what I've known since, or what I think I've known or believed since the mid 90s when I first got into this, that something interacting with us on this planet. None of them go further than that. I don't really, publicly, Eric Davis publicly talks about crash retrievals. He's not the only one. I mean, he goes the furthest out of anybody. But like I said yesterday, Christopher Mellon was on CNN saying that, he was with Davis when he briefed folks on Capitol Hill about crash retrieval. So, and David thinks carrying's a total waste of time. And I'm sorry, I agree with David, because it turns into an argument with him. And I just don't have time to argue about it. I want to focus on other stuff. So anyway, I read a lot. I'm happy people hung in there. And now, I'm glad more people are here now. If there's any questions you have before I go, let me know. I don't know how exciting it was to read Billy's article, but I just wanted to give Billy more exposure because he does not promote his stuff. And while I disagreed with a couple of people in that article, I did agree that I would love to know more details about what happened in the investigations. Hell, I want to know every detail. That's why I love that book so much. There are details that I had never seen before in the OSAP. And as far as, I don't think they're saying we're all hallucinating. They're saying it's black technology, or it's adversarial, or they're pretending that it's something it's not and using it for whatever purposes to, somebody the other day said using it for purposes to beef up the military budget. But I don't think they're not making a good enough argument that this is a threat where we need the budget to go after these threatening UFOs. They're doing a really bad job of it, especially Kelleher. He's like, I don't have any evidence this is a threat. Maybe sometimes it's not good for human health, but because I cannot say after the two years at OSAP that UFOs are a threat. So if the goal is to push the threat angle, him, Elizondo, Mellon, they all suck at it. So I don't know. Bases underwater or under ice, it could be a breakaway civilization from this planet or up above. No one truly knows, not even the military. I mean, I'm open. That's a possibility. I know Richard Dolan talks about it, but it's not something high on my list as far as possibilities. But underwater, yes. We have so many sightings underwater. And that, I don't know, NOAA is included, National Oceanographic. NOAA, I'm not going to say it because now I'm getting tongue-tied. But they're included in the Gillibrand. Oceanic Administration, so underwater. Are we dealing with something that's totally underwater? I don't know. MakingStarWars.net. Thank you. I don't know if I've seen you here before. Are there sightings over nuclear power plants or just weapons locations? Yeah, we've had sightings over nuclear power plants too. I think, I'm not sure if it was which one it was, if anybody wants to jump in. But yes, there have been sightings over nuclear power plants too. I think Guam, I'm not sure if Guam was a nuclear power plant. There was another one that Mellon spoke about. They had these weird drones. They called them drones. They couldn't do anything about them. I don't know what they were. What about Ross's view of a group of ex-military? Oh, yeah, so that's right. David's article. So David wrote this up. Let me do this before I leave today. Let me see. So David wrote this up. So Ross Coulthard did an interview, and I don't want to. Let me see if I could pull it up without showing anything else in your private message. I don't think there's anything really controversial in David's private message to me. Let me just see. Give me 1 second. If there's anything sensitive in there. Nope. I'm going to read what David wrote. And it's Ross Coulthard who wrote, let's see. He did a documentary, The UFO Phenomenon. And he wrote a book, and I'm drawing a blank on the name of his book. But let me pull this up. Before I do that, it's a done deal. As if I think the Pentagon is doing it. I'm not sure. I do not know how that works, where Congress can say you need to stop that effort. I would think they could. I'm not sure what the funding is on that. If Congress can say, sorry, the Gillibrand amendment and Rubio amendment has been passed, do away with your AOI MSG. No, Astro is not a goner. No. Just be patient with that. Still a ways to go. Not a goner. So let me read you what David wrote, and I will put it on the screen in 1 second. Share screen, and David Haith. So this is David's message. I'm not sure where he posted this, but so David wrote this, and it's an interview Ross did with Christina Gomez. Interviewed Ross. I'll put that link also in the show notes. And David begins. There are claims in this interview by mainstream journalist Ross Coulthard that a Californian aerospace company may be paying a group of ex-military personnel to travel worldwide investigating UFO events and retrieving physical samples. Speaking to Christina Gomez, Ross said, I do not believe that the technology that is in possession of the U.S. has been deliberately divested to private. I do believe that technology in the U.S. has been deliberately divested to private aerospace. I know this is a controversial allegation, but I think that there's been a deliberate attempt by certain sections of your military and intelligence services to avoid accountability and transparency. And that is what they're worried about. They've actually committed, hold on 1 second. Sorry, I had to sneeze there. They're worried about, they want to avoid accountability and transparency, and that's what they're worried about. They've actually committed crimes. They've avoided admitting to oversight committees of the United States Congress that there is technology that has been quietly hived off into private aerospace companies. And I've been told by people I have to be careful here. Let me just say, I'm aware of claims that there is a group of ex-military who go around the world investigating the phenomena, and my understanding is they're not paid by any government. They're paid by a private aerospace company based out of Long Beach, California. Now, let me just stop right there. In the interview that Luis Elizondo did with Richard Dolan, which I transcribed on my blog, UfoJoe.net, Lou talks about a close colleague of his encountering Men in Black, like a Men in Black type group, something that operates on the black side of the house. He said something in black budget. He didn't say it was run by an aerospace corporation, but he said that a close colleague of his encountered them, and these people, basically they arrive on the scene and they confiscate UFO data and they intimidate people. Is this the same group that Ross is talking about here? I don't know. So he said it's a private aerospace company based out of Long Beach, California. Somebody today told me the only aerospace company they know in Long Beach is Boeing. Ross continues, I've spoken to former military personnel who claim to have been part of that body. A number of them are people who've worked for our Defense Signals Directorate, as it was then known, or other intelligence or military services in our country. But I'm told there is a collaborative effort to investigate the phenomenon and to retrieve any physical samples, and this has been going on for some time. Speaking of a very deliberate effort made by key officials in your government to shut down and neutralize public interest in the phenomenon, Ross added. Incredible as it may sound, religious zealots inside your military establishment are trying to shut this down because they find the whole thing offensive to their religious beliefs. They're deep evangelical Christians at high levels in the intelligence services, particularly the U.S. Air Force, and they're just morally offended by the idea that there might be a non-human explanation for the phenomenon. So what do? They stick their heads in the sand and they lie to the American public about it. And frankly, they'll keep on lying unless you good people out there start shaking the cage, rattling the cage, and demanding information because you can. We're at such an important time here where all of a sudden the Congress has a proposition before it where essentially the Congress would require UAP transparency. It would require reports every year, I think every 6 months, detailing what the United States government knows about the UAP issue, detailing what the U.S. government knows about incredible references to alien life, non-human entities, and recovered craft. These recommendations by Senator Gillibrand are absolutely fundamentally important to our understanding, our potential understanding as humanity of what is probably one of the most monumental secrets that's ever been kept. It is the biggest story of our time. I cannot overstate this, and I don't care for a moment what the skeptics and debunkers say. The level of proof is now far beyond the criminal burden of proof, beyond reasonable doubt. There is something that the United States is sitting on that it doesn't want you to know, and key officials in your Air Force and your intelligence services are desperately trying to stop you from finding out about it. Now you can go on for the rest of your life in a sleepy daze and just let the world manipulate itself around you, or you can find out what's really going on. Because I've spoken to some of these people. I've spoken to some of these insiders. I know what's coming. There's a lot of that I can't talk about, but some of the revelations are breathtaking. And I think people just need to realize they have the power to push. They have the power to force change. We are at an absolutely monumental moment in political history in the United States where the Congress is deciding once and for all, will the public ever know? This is it. And that is David Haith transcribing Ross Coulthart's interview with Christina Gomez. That is David's Twitter. You could follow him. And Christina Gomez, I'll link to that article, but I will also pull up on a screen for people who have not signed up for Twitter, which you should, but the next best thing is to follow me here, but I can't cover every little thing. Darn it. I don't know what the name of her Twitter is, so she has a name. I think it's Eyes on, there we go. I remembered. So that's Christina's Twitter. She works for the Debrief, and that's her Twitter handle. I have not listened to that interview, and if it wasn't for David transcribing, I would have not known about it. So thank you, David. Any quick comments before I go? Where's Danny Sheehan been? Good question. I got to put out my 70,000 Danny Sheehan transcript, which is really repetitive, but I think I'm just going to put it out and not worry about adding too much to it. People can read it or ignore it. It's really long. Also, there are a lot of companies listed in Long Beach. I did not know that. The Jinn. Yeah, if you watch IG Majidi, the dog's name was Jin, which at the time I didn't know that was the Jinn. But yeah, some of what we're dealing with, maybe that. I don't know. And the only company I see making tech breakthroughs in the military sector is Lockheed. So I don't know who Ross is talking about. I know he's sharing information with what his sources tell him. People will criticize him for that. But he's an investigative reporter. If he has sources that he trusts and he's sharing what he can with us, I don't see why he would be criticized. But there are people that criticize him. I won't get into it. There's some big names that criticize him. I don't know who Ross's sources are, but he's a former 60 Minutes Australia investigative reporter who won a lot of awards, and it's not every day that we have an international national reporter interested in this and staying on top of it. So I think we should support him. I mean, I don't know who his sources are, like I said, so And he talks, there are other people too that talk about time travel being involved in this. You know, I don't know. Definitely, that is my coolest solution or part of the solution if we're dealing with some of ourselves from the future, which would be really cool. But as Ross said, that would mean that they felt compelled enough to come back to this time and, you know, because something happens in the future. So David said, I posted a link to half a dozen aerospace groups out of Long Beach. Okay. On Twitter, David, I will look for that. Ross is okay. What's the beef? The person just doesn't believe what Ross is saying, that his sources are wrong, but that's fine. Ross can only go by his sources. So I don't know. Ross did say he has an idea of what's coming, which then we'll see stuff. So I don't know. Do we have to push hard to see it? I know. Or is it just going to come out because that's just what's happening? Just some sort of time release plan. And I know, yeah, Dr. Masters, yeah, he believes that we're dealing with time travelers. Whitley Strieber mentioned one of the ladies who encountered a being at the cabin said, you know, she said the being was really ugly. And the being said to her, you're going to look just like this one day. So that makes me think time travelers too. So I don't know. Like I said, every day it's different. Every day I have a different opinion of what we're dealing with. Nothing set in stone whatsoever. Just that something is here. I said the other day on another show that I'm open to everything being black technology from the beginning of this in the 40s. But the percentage I give, the odds of that being the truth are like, for me, I'm just doing, you know, just keeping my mind open, but it's like down here. I don't think that's the case. Obviously, when Kit Green, and I say this all the time, when Kit Green tells me his parents had a sighting back in the early 30s of a craft rising up out of a lake with multiple witnesses, you know, that's a transmedium classic flying saucer. I don't think that's black technology. So, well, Kit Green lied to you because he's part of the PSYOP. Okay, everything is a PSYOP. I know, I get it. It gets boring. It gets really tiring. I just don't see the point of it. All right, last one. Tom DeLonge said on Rogan, we're dealing with did not sound like time travelers. Seems more like archons. Yeah, I don't know if, you know, Tom and Peter Levenda, there's an interview I need to transcribe where Levenda talked about there was one source they had. They called them informants. Levenda calls them informants. And he said he thought they were pulling this informant was pulling their leg because it's a big question. Where is their information coming from? Where is Tom DeLonge's information coming from? As Ross Coulthard said, nobody thinks Tom DeLonge is lying. The question is, are the people that DeLonge and Levenda are talking to, are they lying to them? You know, just like with Eric Davis and the crash retrievals, was Admiral Wilson lying to him, or was the person that Admiral Wilson found at the aerospace company, did they lie to Admiral Wilson? I don't think so. I do think we have at least one intact craft, but it's, you know, something you have to consider. Anyway, all right, I'm going to go. I don't know if I'll do this tomorrow. I'll do it more often. It depends. I mean, it doesn't get a lot of, I don't get a lot of views on YouTube for this, but I know it's really good for the YouTube folks. So I'll try to do at least an hour. It may not be every day. Today was a good day, even though I know it was a little boring from rereading. But so the Green Hiker, thank you very much. And as you do that, my dog is growling. He's mad that I just made money on this. The dog is opposed to me making any money on this. So thank you again, Green Hiker. Tom could absolutely be used. Yeah, you know, people call him a useful idiot. I don't think he's an idiot. I think he was very important for what went on and when the information came out. So, all right. So that was 2 hours. That went by really quick. And anytime in the future, if you guys have like really important questions as I'm reading, put it all in caps and I'll see it easier. I'm sure I missed questions because I'm trying to read and focus too. So I will probably see you tomorrow, and then I will not see you on Friday and Saturday because I am working some boxing event at MGM, and I do not know who's boxing. I don't think I'm shooting the fight. I think it's the pre-fight. The link to those aerospace companies. Okay. Thank you, David. Have a good night, Hutch. Thanks. What is it? Fuck a wolf. It's hard for me to read. I need glasses. All right, guys. Have a good night. Thank you, David.